Hello and welcome to the Super Rugby Aotearoa Round 1 and Super Rugby AU Round 2 review. Hi, I'm Paul. I'll be your host this evening as we review those four games. Yes, we had the Highlanders versus the Crusaders, the Queensland Reds versus the Melbourne Rebels, the Hurricanes versus the Blues, and the Brumbies versus the Waratahs. And joining me to mull over all of the action, I've got new good-looking haircut Stephen Harris, and Safe also had his haircut, but you may not be able to tell, Boa Athu. How are you doing, guys?
Very good, Paul.
Very well, thanks. Kia ora and greetings. Good evening. I hope you Aucklanders are enjoying Lockdown 3, level, it's version 3.0, isn't it?
Thank you for doing the hard yards for the rest of us, so that we all get to do that.
You're very welcome.
So next weekend, obviously, by the way, folks, with Auckland in level 3, luckily there isn't. The Blues are not playing next weekend, but it looks like they're going to be sticking around in Wellington for a while to do some training. But currently the Chiefs versus, I've gone blank who's they're playing now, on Friday night next weekend, will be going ahead under level 2 conditions, which I think from memory means no crowds. However, it still looks like I'm on track to get a media pass for that. So Chiefs versus the Highlanders at 7 p.m. on Friday. So hopefully in this show next weekend, we will actually have some post-match interviews from that game from the players and coaches, or at least a post-match press conference to show you as well. So looking forward to that next weekend, but it does look like no crowds probably for the Chiefs versus Highlanders and the Crusaders versus the Hurricanes next weekend. But hey, that's all in the future, and we have a preview show to cover that on Thursday evening at 8 p.m. So let's forget about that for now, and let's revel in the past. And take our minds back to Friday night when the Highlanders kicked off against the Crusaders. Now, Boa, I'm sure you've got all the stats there, but essentially the story of the game, I think, was that the Highlanders came out, had a very good opening period, didn't put points on though, and then the Crusaders did their kind of thing. Is that borne out by the stats? Were the Highlanders just not clinical enough in that first half, and the Crusaders were?
Well, I think it was just very poor decision making and very poor on-field leadership. I was very, very surprised, given that Tony Brown, amazing coach in charge. They had 5 very simple, clear-cut opportunities to take the points. It was pretty straightforward. All they had to do was call a shot, and they just left points on the park. And I think the most telling factor was just prior to the halftime, there was a penalty which was about 15 in from right-hand touch, about 20 meters from a very kickable goal. Instead, they went for a line-out option. They went to the tail. They messed it up, and the Crusaders go pretty much the length of the field, and they get points on the other side. So, well, yeah, you could look at it from a execution point of view, but by and large, for me, it was very, very poor on-field decision-making. And if you recall, rewind a couple of weeks back, I did clearly mention that, kicking is going to be a huge part of this campaign. And, fast forward 2 weeks, and Highlanders, they literally gave it away.
Now, before we go any further, Stephen, I think you've got some hellos to say.
Well, yeah, hello to my niece Kitty, who's watching the show. I hope you're well and stay safe in COVID. Just on the back of what Paul was saying, he's dead right about the decision making. And the classic example to me is, when so the definition of stupidity is trying the same thing, and when it keeps on, when it's not working, you keep trying it again, and that's exactly what they did with the driving maul. And ironically enough, when the Highlanders did put things together. Obviously, the quick pickup on the yellow card, Mickey Ellie too, with the quick drive, quick change of direction. When they actually were a little bit creative, they actually scored points. So go figure.
So yeah, not pretty much just put the points that does suggest that it's 14-0 down. At that stage, do you need to start chasing 5s and 7s rather than doing 3s? I think if you're still in the first half, you have time on your hands. Get yourself on the board. Get yourself some. Get yourself in the game at least. You don't have to win the game in the first half. You have still got another half of rugby to go. You've got plenty of time to score points, but so you just need to start chipping away at it. I think is how I would want to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. And from a statistical point of view, if you go back and look at the last 5 seasons of Super Rugby in New Zealand, most teams have spent most time in between the 22 and the 10-meter line. That's where most of the rugby is played. In fact, I would say about 70% based on GPS statistical data. Now, the interesting thing is they only convert about 13 to 14% of their territorial advantage into points, i.e., not wanting to take those kickable shots at goal. So I think there's a clear lesson to be learned here. If you're in that zone, if you get a penalty, take the shot. Simple. That's to me, as from a coaching point of view, it's a no-brainer. And why teams keep repeating the same mistake is just simply and utterly beyond me.
Yeah, and I get that. When they did get that yellow card to Blackadder, because we'll come back to a point made by Simon in a second here. But when they did have that one, some good on-field decision making around how they, or around the style of what call to make on that scrum to get that try, with Michaeli Tu'u coming inside, getting over the gain line, creating that space. Then Aaron Smith spinning it back the other way very quickly to Frizzell, who from that far out was going to bash over the winger and score. So there are times when they have that ability to do that, but as you say, that take those points while you are there. Now we've got Stefansson says, look, Crusaders will give you gift points to stop you scoring tries to you now 15 points. Simon says, is it just me, or is it more like when you give away the most penalties, you're more likely to win the match? Is giving away penalties actually a good way to win games? And Tony Brown came out and made that point, didn't he? About the should the team that gives away the least penalties, that has the most attacking play, should that be the team that ends up on the wrong end of the scoreboard? We'll go, Stephen, go to you first from a philosophical point of view, and then we'll check with Boa as to what the stats say around penalties and winning.
Yeah, Paul, it depends on what the actual penalties are, and in terms of where the field position or where they're giving them away. If you're giving away a few in that red zone area, then it's very much an issue. But sometimes you'll get teams giving away penalties in their own half, and I've probably got a little bit of a point when we get to the Blues game. They gave away a lot of penalties, but they actually gave away a lot of penalties when they were basically attacking with the ball as well. So yeah, it really depends where those positions on the field are, to me.
Yeah, so to add to what Stephen said, and add to the previous point I made, where most teams in Super Rugby for the last 5 seasons have been playing their rugby in between the opponent's 22 and the 10-meter line. That's where most of the action takes place. So from a refereeing point of view, and you just know that it comes with me. It always comes down to that. With they've got Specsavers on their shirts. I mean, really, it's time that they clamp down on the serial offending, or i.e. what they call professional fouls. I would rather call it cynical fouls. I don't see anything professional about fouling and getting out of jail. But what's actually happening is, because this pattern is now accepted almost in the eyes of professional referees, and they're not clamping down on it early enough, teams are getting away with murder. So I thought Tony Brown was very charitable and he bit his own tongue. If I was in his position, I would have absolutely given the referees and touch judges an absolute spray, because they are not policing the area, this very critical area. Because keep in mind, guys, right before the season, they come out and say, we're going to make sure the game's clean. We're going to police the breakdown. We're going to really clamp down on the discipline. And when they turn up on the field, they do the complete opposite. Now, I can understand if this happens at grassroots or community rugby. Most of these people are volunteers. They don't get paid for this. But at the professional level, these guys have a sponsor called Specsavers. My eyesight isn't the greatest, but I can still pick some of those infringements, second, third time as they open into the game. It's just a case of actually them laying down the law and saying, guys, third foul in this area, if you do something stupid, just straight off to the bin and watch how the world changes. But they're not doing that. So teams like the Crusaders know that they can get away with murder. They continue to do that. If it was in real life, imagine if someone committed that same crime so many times, they'd probably end up with about 50,000 years of, incarceration.
So my answer to this one, and I've tried this one before, and this gets mixed reactions. Generally people are against it, but I would say every fifth penalty is a yellow card on the repeat side. Now, you also have yellow cards taking out players in the air and that kind of thing, but rather than making it a judgmental decision by the referee, who we know gets affected by home crowds and things like that, I would make it purely a numbers game. If you on your fifth penalty, you lose a player. End of story. And in this game, that would have meant the Highlanders would have lost one player because they gave up 8 penalties. The Crusaders would have lost 3 players because they gave up 15 penalties. And I think that would have made a difference.
Paul, if you've had four penalties and you're in possession and you give away an in possession penalty, does that person go to the bin? Seems a little harsh to me, because it's
if you're holding on to the ball and stopping opposition from getting the opportunity of a turnover and then broken field play to try and score. Absolutely, it's cynical, but just the other way.
Maybe if you're giving away penalties, slowing ball down, coming in from the side, offside penalties, I've probably got no issues with that. But yeah, in possession penalties, well, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, and gentlemen, maybe it's time the judicial side of things. Sansa looked at actually sanctions on serial offenders. You know how people, if they pulled up for foul play when they front a judiciary, maybe there has to be some kind of process where you can actually look at certain teams and look at the statistics of where certain players who are the serial offenders, they then need to get pulled up. And something similar, there has to be some kind of judicial code where they get a post-game judicial hearing and they get suspended for the same offense. Maybe it's come to that because you watch elite level rugby. This is just becoming quite cynical. It's becoming a bit of a joke, and it's really killing the game, and as well as the momentum, and also from a spectator point of view, it's just destroying the spectacle.
I was about to say, in football, what do they have? You get a yellow card, and even if you pick up a second yellow card, but in the next match, I think you get suspended. Something along those lines. So yeah, definitely, if you're recidivist, there could be something in there.
The problem is when you're
talking yellow cards here rather than penalties, aren't we? Whereas maybe something along the lines of you're allowed 1 penalty a game, and then when every other penalty clocks up, and when you get to 5 points, you miss a game. So you're allowed 1 penalty on your second. Now it doesn't mean that props would spend, or maybe props get allowed 2 a game because of the number of scrummaging penalties, and that way it would start. But it all comes down to intent of coaching at the end of the day, doesn't it? If the coaches are coaching with a certain intent, who cares what the laws are? We'll have a good game, and that's what it comes down to. Nocturnal rights. He's also there for a penalty count leads to suspension. Simon Hughes suggesting 5 penalties automatic, kick at posts rather than necessarily losing a player, and that kind of thing. Jordan Clark, maybe it's a stigma of keeping this attacking style New Zealand's renowned for and not kicking penalties like most other countries, going back to that taking threes and going for the corner. Now, to a certain degree, I can understand it in certain games. So, for example, one of the things you definitely want to be able to do is that if you know you are 4 points down with timeout, you want to know that your kick to the corner will lead to a good maul and a try. So, do you, in games that don't matter so much, so for example, say November tour games or July tour games in the international scene, do you in those games actually turn down threes to practice that line-out maul so that when it comes to that crunch game in the Rugby World Cup final, you're 4 points down, you know how to execute? I can see to a certain degree that that's there. Now, whether you should be doing that in Super Rugby games to make sure you're ready for it at international level, I don't know, and I don't. I'm not so sure that's the right way to go about things. But I can see in some cases where you would do it for sort of real match practice so that you're ready for it later on. But and I don't think here is now the right sort of time to be doing it.
Yeah, just to add to what Jordan saying there, there is a very big reluctance from a coaching point of view to actually focus on the goal kicking area. This is something I grapple with even with some of my senior coaches at club level. There's no real attention on goal kicking. So this, I think, from an overall point of view on how players are coached and how they come through the grades, and also from a coaching or a coach development point of view, this is something which needs to be looked at. And I can recall a conversation with John Hart I had many, many years ago when he had the likes of Andrew Mertens. His first option was whenever they had points on the table, I get an opportunity to take a shot at goal, especially against teams like the Springboks and the Wallabies. It was always called for the shot.
Now, something that, Boa, you spotted during this game was that the ball being used in Super Rugby Aotearoa was the Adidas ball, not the Gilbert ball. Now, I remember hearing the word Gilbert used during one of the Super Rugby AU games, so I assume they are using a Gilbert ball over there. So it's going to be interesting to see which ball we use when it comes to the Super Rugby Trans-Tasman. But would there be an argument that by using the Adidas ball has different kicking techniques or different kicking properties to a Gilbert ball, that when we end up in Trans-Tasman, or when we end up with players going to the All Blacks and playing overseas with a different ball, that this is going to hurt their ability to kick by the fact that Super Rugby Aotearoa is using an Adidas?
Well, guys, the fact of the matter is, I know the Gilbert range of balls quite well. I know it inside out. Whereas the Adidas ball, I have very, very little knowledge of it, and I haven't really come across it, because the only teams at the moment who use them are obviously what was the All Blacks and at NPC level. Now, I know the feedback from the players has been that they much prefer the Gilbert ball, but due to commercial rights, etc., that's probably where Adidas have come in and flexed their muscles. The reality is, with the Gilbert, the test level or the elite level match ball they use in 2021 is a ball called the Sirius, SIRIUS. And of course, the Gilbert has a patented technology which has its valve on the spine of the ball. So what it means that it gives the ball a lot more stability when you're kicking the ball, i.e. with goal kicking. And of course, they have another patented technology, which is 5-dimensional pimples all over the ball. Now, if I compare that with the Adidas match ball, again, guys, this is my personal view. I think it's just nowhere in the ballpark. So that could possibly have some effect. But the easiest way to fix that is to get a whole bunch of Adidas match balls and get your goal kickers practicing them. Because end of the day, Adidas are a major sponsor of New Zealand rugby. And I'm sure getting a couple hundred balls across to all the key goal kickers at NPC level and above is no real big deal. But depending on where the rugby is played, so i.e. if they go to Australia and they play Trans-Tasman or Super Rugby AU, yes, they'll be using Gilbert. But any games played in New Zealand for the local home unions, it will be the Adidas.
There we go. So we now can join cricket in having the discussion between the Kookaburra and the Duke's ball. We can now have similar discussions in rugby about the difference between the Adidas and the Gilbert ball, which is great to see. Those are some of the key points that I wanted to bring up from this game. Boys, any other any sort of key points or players you'd like to mention?
Yeah, from my point of view, I think, like any performance, you need some of your guys, your key guys, to stand up. And we saw Frizzell just, we saw him with a couple of good carries, but he was never really, shall I say, consistent enough. There was good performance too from the two locks, especially the Irish kid Regan, Jack Regan, who came into the side. I thought he was reasonably solid. The ex-flanker from Billy Harmon probably didn't show out as much as I thought he would, having played for the Crusaders before. But I'm saying that when your set piece scrums under a bit of pressure, I suppose you're always going to be playing second fiddle. Yeah, it was interesting. I thought in terms of a newcomer, Connor Garden-Bishop, I thought was very, very good on debut.
Yeah, certainly. Connor Garden caught my eye as well. And also, it was nice to see Liam scored a couple of runs out on the wing. So, his reintroduction into top-level first-class rugby, that's a really good sign. So, someone to watch, and I'll be really interested to see how Squire develops from here.
Cool. Let's move on then to across the ditch, to the Reds versus the Rebels in this one. And this really was not the game that I think a lot of us. Hang on. Yes, sorry. We have to go back. Did Moody get away with foul play? Sorry, yes. I forgot the obvious red card in the first 2 minutes. Yes, Moody got away with foul play. You cannot be swinging your hands in the area of someone's face, hitting people in the face. Sure, it's an open palm. Sure, the other player shouldn't be holding him, but you can't react by hitting someone in the face. And I thought the only reason he got away with that was A, he's an All Black, and B, it was in the first couple of minutes of the very first game of the very first tournament, and it was far too early for a red card to be given. That's my opinion, boys.
Well, the worst fact of it was the referee is a professional optometrist, Ben O'Keefe, with Specsavers on his shirt. So I rest my case, guys. I just couldn't believe that. I had my son watching the game with me, and he said, "Dad, don't you get arrested for that when you do that in real life?" And I said, "Yeah, well, there you go."
I originally thought when I first saw it, and I sort of looked at your comments, especially during our rugby chat that we have, which is always interesting. I've kind of reassessed. I think I would have gone to yellow. Should have got at least a yellow card, but heck no, not a red. If there was a little bit more impact, then you might have been looking at a red. But he should have got a yellow at least.
Or an orange card, and then he's fronts the judiciary.
We'll have to see whether he gets cited or not. I doubt he will be. I very much doubt it. I think they're going to go with the referee's decision on the pitch at the time, and that it calmed him having a word, calmed it down after that. Because we didn't see that kind of stuff happening anymore. So yeah, it was. I guess an opportunity to referee. He made it clear. Look, no more of that. Had enough. And thankfully it stopped. But I thought he got very lucky there. A couple of comments here. Yes, see, he's a Crusader. And outside New Zealand, red card all day long. Well, we'll see. Let's move over then to the other side of the Tasman. But yes, thank you, Jordan, for bringing that up. I forgot that one. We definitely had to talk about it. Across the ditch. So the Reds against Rebels. I think everyone expected the Rebels basically to be taken to pieces by the Reds, and for this to be a comfortable Reds win. It turned into anything but, basically, as the Rebels turned up and basically defended for their lives and took every single shot at goal that they could get. They did miss a couple, but that meant that they defended very well. The Reds on the other side of things, their tactic was to run the Rebels until they were too tired, and then pull away in the last 20. The problem for them was they weren't getting any points along the way, and so are drifting further and further behind, and so it ended up being a big catch-up game rather than a game that was fairly tight and then they pull away from in the end. Not so right to me. Reds try to play a high tempo, but way too many errors for it to pay off. No, it did pay off in the end because, hey, they did get the win right at the death. But it did take them the 75 minutes to actually get there and to tire the Rebels out. The Rebels performing above expectation in that one. And Stephen, I think I'm not sure if you decided to give up on this one halfway through or not, or did you last to the end of this one?
No, I actually ended up sticking it out because part of me was hoping that the Rebels would cause a bit of an upset just to throw the competition wide open. But listen, probably at the end of the day, the Reds will look back and maybe just a bit of I think I commented in the chat, just a lack of respect more than anything else, where they've decided to come out and run these, basically go wide without doing the hard work up front first. And I think that's what it came down to. The irony when they did basically get the winning try, Muffy getting a second try, the hooker, that they basically reverted to the driving maul play. So I thought I was watching the Brumbies there for a minute. But on saying that, there was some solid enough performances from the Rebels that just kept them in the game. They picked up a number of penalties that broke down. None better than the boy Hardwick on the side of the scrum, who got a lot of turnovers, was a real nuisance for the night. But it also shows you how important Powell, Tumua and Hodge are to this particular team. And I've got to give Matt Tumua his dues after getting hit in that very heavy tackle. Boy, I think he was... there must have been bells ringing in his head, probably the hit of the weekend.
Look, it was...
absolutely, and he did get... and he got back up.
And gentlemen, I have to say that last try they scored, that drive over Fishtail Mall, I thought that very last play where the Reds' first five joined the ball, that was a very illegal tactic. He went and shepherded in front just over the line, and he took out a would-be defender, and that gave Murphy a clear run onto the line. And I thought it was highly illegal and should have been a penalty, but nonetheless, there was a referee. I don't think they have Specsavers as a sponsor for the Australian Refs, but they're no better as well. He was right on the angle. That was my take on it. And look, it was a very sloppy game, wasn't it? Was it 36 or 37 handling errors? And again, it just goes to show the value of kicking goals. 7 out of 7. In fact, Hodge had the opportunity to win it, but he couldn't convert that. So Rebels very, very unlucky. But I have to say, huge question mark over that last try where Murphy went over. That was very, very illegal, and they got away with it.
They did. Well, they missed 3 kicks at goal, did the Rebels. So out of 14 penalties that they were given, they took 10 shots at goal. They gave up 18 penalties themselves. So there were 32 penalties in this game. So the referee's whistle got a good working over in this one.
And also, I mean, there were plenty of high shots, and the entry into the tackle area was just horrible, and there were a number of offenders, and the problem here is because I've been watching these sides, looking at some of their training footage over the week. They actually encourage these players to go very, very high into the contact. They use this whole choke tackle nonsense. So we're gonna see more and more of this, and it's only a matter of time where someone is going to get seriously hurt, and there's going to be cards dished left, right, and centre.
I was going to say, guys, something that I reckon changed the game was that red card when the replacement prop for Tuika got actually sent off the field. And, at that stage you thought, maybe the Rebels are in with a bit of a grin here. But it brought a rejuvenated Taniela Tupou back onto the paddock. And, boy, I don't know. He was obviously ticked about being pulled early. So all of a sudden he put in a real great effort at scrum time and in terms of carry. So I thought he was a real catalyst at the end, and I think they got some good value off the rest of their bench guys.
Yeah, and look, it was interesting to see that the Rebels managed to injure their prop and bring back their big prop as well to counter him. I hope there's nothing nefarious going on there, and that he probably was. That maybe he was probably injured, and if he is, hopefully he fixes up well. But yes, we definitely saw that. Yeah, that red card. When that red card happened, I thought, okay, that's it over for the Reds. They were chasing the game. They're a player down, but actually it energized them. Because it was 13-18 prior to that, and they came through in that next sort of 20 minutes without that player to win it 23-21. The other player that Boa had, Stephen, I don't know if you're, so folks, at the moment for me, Boa is cutting out, but apparently for you guys, he's coming through loud and clear. So sorry if I don't respond to some of the things he says. That's because I've not heard it, but hopefully you guys have. But it sounds like it's good for broadcast. So, hey, don't worry about me. But Hunter Paisami in this one, a bit of dumb play at the end. He very nearly lost this game. There are seconds left on the clock. And what does he do? He kicks the ball away, which you're just thinking, why are you doing that? Okay, fine. He was in his own 22, but still, you've only got seconds left. Two, maybe even just one ruck would have been enough. But no, he decides to kick ahead and then make a high hit, hitting someone in the head, giving away a penalty and an opportunity for Matt Tamua to win the game, which he missed. So very lucky for Hunter Paisami there. Bowie, Hunter Paisami is one of the guys you actually called out ahead of time on our chat, saying, look, he's got an issue with his tackle technique. He's always going to be at risk.
Yeah, look, he's one of my former players from Manukau Rovers. He's very talented player. Unfortunately, he has this tendency, and I could count the amount of times where we've actually told him, you got to stay low, and he's one of those kids who just really wants to get stuck in. But again, this is where coaching comes into the aspect of it, especially pre-season. You got to work on these technical deficiencies, and given the amount of scrutiny around the head and neck contact, it's only a matter of time before this kid's going to do it again. And if you recall last year in the Eden Park Test, there were a couple of times he actually got away with it. It was just reckless. He had a go at, I think it was Caleb Clark on the left-hand wing, about 15 in from touch when he was sauntering to the try line. No arms, going high. I get that certain players enjoy the level of contact, but, at test level and at elite level, you go in with that level of force and impact, chances are you're going to hurt someone seriously or kill them. So it needs to be completely stamped out. And again, this is where the judiciary really needs to get proactive. And if there is a player who has this problem, now, classic example is Sio Tompkinson from the Highlanders. We know he's a well-documented serial offender. Coaches really need to get on top of this, and they need to correct their technique. So if any of these guys are watching, any of your coaches, if you have problems with tackle technique and entering too high into tackle, give me a call. I will help you with Safe Tackle Framework.
Hey guys, just a quick thing as well. Wasn't it fantastic to see you mentioned Hunter Paisami from the Manukau Rovers, but marking him in the other number 13 jersey, another former Manukau Rovers player, and Stacey Ellie. And I thought Stacey was, I thought he was solid without being too spectacular, but I was just a little bit disappointed that Hodge tends to be a little bit of a tucker, and I don't know how many times he passed, but I'd have loved to have seen Stacey with a little bit more space.
And it just goes to show that, the greatest rugby academy of all is South Auckland. There's no question about it. And you can see the Wallabies and most of the Super Rugby teams in Australia are direct beneficiaries of them. All these imports coming through from South Auckland. I'm really happy for both these guys. I'm super proud they're from my club, and I wish them nothing but the best. Hopefully, both of these guys can keep their tackle height a bit low and spend more time on the field than off it because of cards.
I agree.
Fabulous. Time to then move on, guys, to the Hurricanes versus the Blues. Stefansson Minton is definitely with you there. He's all Rovers all the way through. Oh dear me. Jordan Clark, good to see less forward passes leading to tries this week. I understand rugby struggles for viewers in Australia, but don't ruin it for the rest of us. Really? Because I thought we had quite a few forward passes, quite a few lateral passes this week that we got away with. So there were of forward passes
Comment of the night.
going on.
Specsavers.
Yes. Deary me.
Jordan.
Yeah. Look, it's look. There are certain things that are now allowed, all right? Unless you blatantly throw it 10 meters forward, it's a lateral pass. Unless the scrum half literally moves to the feet of the number 8 and puts the ball in there, it's a straight put in. There are some things, that are just allowed nowadays. So it is what it is, I'm afraid, folks. Anyway, sorry, Stephen.
I was about to say it's a good segue into the opening try of the Blues Hurricanes game, Paul, because I must admit I thought the left to right pass from Aotearoa Black looked like, to me, it looked like it came forward out of the hand, and I made a comment today on our rugby chat forum that I was a little surprised that Adi Savia didn't use a referee's challenge. Was it a little bit too early in the game for him? Because I actually suspect if Akira Yowani had basically found Sam Knott that scored the try, I suspect they would have went back and had a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, in my notes here, it's like comedy play, break by Blues, open brackets, yep, forward, close brackets, Kane's interception, but Fafita doesn't even try to catch the ball, and Papiali'i scores. So, yes, you're quite... yeah, I didn't know straight away. It was yep, forward. It was all a bit of a mess then, wasn't it?
It kind of was, but I just want to say on that play, it almost looked like James Blackwell threw his hand out to catch it and then pulled it away, and Fafita obviously thought his lock was going to grab the ball, but didn't grab it at all, and before you know it, it set up in the arms of Dalton Papiali'i. So yeah, really odd start.
Yeah, so Steve, with that challenge, I fully agree with you, and again, that's down to bad comms and bad coordination, because surely someone in the coaching box would have gone on comms to the water carrier who was on comms to say, Adi, check, go for the challenge, check that forward pass, because that forward pass, tell you what it looked like. It looked like that little shortcut where when you're driving to Whitianga through the Coroglen goat track, that's how it kind of wavered away. And also you have to ask the question. I mean, the touch judge was pretty parallel to that pass, and you have to ask the question, guys. In a professional environment, when this sort of nonsense is happening, I really wonder. Yeah,
can the TMO still intervene and query that pass, even though it was a couple of plays back?
Technically, no, he can't.
But hey, we've seen technically things happen that can't technically be allowed. So hey, look, I'm all for the TMO getting involved if it gets the right decision right at the end of the day. So who cares? That's what they're there for. So the Blues got away with that one. They got a bit lucky. Let's be honest.
Quite a bit, yeah.
And look, one of the hallmarks of the Blues in last season was they start early, they score early, and they did it yet again. But then they kind of faded out of the game. Amua really had a very good game. Dane Coles, folks, showed some great some good footwork to just totally leave Caleb Clark flat-footed as he went over for his try. I thought it was double movement, but on the replay he didn't get held and was allowed to score. He had a really good game. All the way through it. Blackwell, on the other hand, didn't. Let's be blunt. It was 5 penalties, including a yellow card, and a bunch of missed tackles as well, and also that dummy to leave Fafita totally at sea at the beginning of the game. His yellow card came out. And to be fair, the Hurricanes did pretty well because it took the Blues a real long time camped in at 22 before, and they end up taking a couple of threes rather than actually scoring any tries. So the Hurricanes really put in a shift then, even if they did lose some points at the end. So it finished 11-7 at halftime. Basically, Blues started. They didn't lose points. They gained 6 points during that period. So I'm reading the wrong column here. So yeah, the Hurricanes lost a player and then picked up 6 points to lead at halftime 11-7. Second half, the Blues kicked off. I put a tweet out and scored a try early. I put a tweet out saying, "Oh, the Blues have started this half like the other half. Are they going to fade again?" For Blues fans, thankfully, no, they didn't, and they end up scoring 16-31. Now, to me, probably a bit flattered by that score. They had all the play and the ball and the territory to get that score and some more, but they just weren't accurate enough and benefited from a couple of late points because of the Hurricanes chasing the game. Otherwise, it would have been closer. But it's one of those games where execution wasn't good, and the Hurricanes probably lost because a couple of their players just didn't step up, or some of their players were particularly bad, and the other players just couldn't make up for that.
Paul, I was about to say that time, just heading back to the first half when Blackwell did get the yellow card, to me, that 7 or 8 minutes before halftime was the most disappointing aspect of the Blues' performance on the night, because here they decided not to take 3 points when they basically could have just shifted out, just pulled away a little bit in terms of score, maybe taking it out to, I think at the time that would have taken it out to 10-5. I think it was. They get the ball back, you go back down into their territory, but instead they decided to go for a little bit of a killer blow, and it was the number 8 Hoskins Satutu with probably just a little bit inaccurate at the back of the scrum, where all he really needed to do was actually bend down and pass the ball, but he actually just shifted sideways, and the pass wasn't quite accurate enough. And of course, Adi Savia, who was absolutely brilliant in those last 8 minutes just before halftime with turnovers. And to me, that was the real disappointing aspect of the Blues play, was just their decision making and the ability to have that real killer blow. If that's what you're deciding to do, you've got to be 100% accurate.
Yeah, look, a couple of points that really stuck out for me is, I think, Asafa Moa. Oh, what a game. And there was one instance where he actually went over and scored a try, and it was one of the Auckland back rowers. It actually was a brutal high shot, just clipped him on the neck and ears, but he just completely shrugged it off. And he got it up front, and there was inside pass, a slight sequence, and he looked like he was hungry. He looked like he'd done the work. And when he scored that second on the far corner, he was kind of rifling through 6 inches off the ground, and no one, and I repeat, no one dared lay a finger on him, because all you can do is stick a forearm, and chances are you will break it. I had a look at Jonathan Ruru's the look on his face. He just didn't want any part of that. So some real good signs there for Amoa. You rightly said, Stephen. Dane Coles who, and also I have to say that conversion by Jody Barrett. Not sure why the referees, again, who are wearing Specsavers on their shirts, waved it down. That was a beautiful kick from the corner flag. I know it was only 2 points, but again, I have to make mention of this, because these things always stick out like a sore thumb when I watch the professional game, because we all expect all our players, coaches to do their bit at 100%, but our friends in white, who all their job was to pretty much raise the flag, couldn't get that one right. Now, could they?
Well, okay, let's sort this one out, because Jordan Clark saying, please can someone explain. So what happened was, looking at the cameras, it looks like it went through all day. And as Nocturnal Right says, optical illusion, because what came over on the referee's speakers or microphones was apparently that the ball had traveled above the posts. And when the referees were looking up, they believed it would have hit the post, not gone through them. Now, we very rarely see that in professional rugby because the posts are so high. Most kicks don't go above them, higher than the actual level of the posts. So that is what the referees said. And as Nocturnal Right says, the ball was swinging, but it was already past the posts at that point. So quite from the camera angle that we had, they only showed one angle. They didn't show any others, did they? Let's be honest. That is what the referees are calling. we weren't there. We didn't have the best seats, to be honest, to say they were wrong.
No, I disagree. I completely put this one on the touch judges, because if you look at Jody Barrett's previous kicks, if you look at the trajectory, it was going very, very high. And surely you would think that the touch judges in this instance, they placed themselves right under the crossbar, either side of the uprights. They should have gone slightly further back. So to me, that's not paying attention to the game and not understanding what's in front of them. So at the professional level, this to me, it's just unacceptable.
I'd be also curious if
actually, no, hang on. But by placing themselves at the bottom of the post, they can look straight up and see where the posts are. If they're further back, you've then got parallax error, and they can't and it becomes again an optical judgment. So I'm going to disagree with you on that one.
Well, let's agree to disagree, because if we have a kicker who has a parabolic trajectory, I work with my goal kickers with right throat at the academy at Manuka, and that's something I do. I always stand right at the back, almost at the edge of the touchline, because then I can actually see what the trajectory is, whether it's clearing the post. So if the referees are listening, if you want some tips, send me a text message. I'll show you and teach you what to do.
It's quite interesting, guys. We one of the tries that the Blues scored, I think that was the Perifeta try. The Blues actually tried that exact same move in the first half. In fact, there were two moves that they actually tried, and they just got their timing completely wrong. In fact, they made the comment look like they met in the car park, but they obviously just got the depth correct, got the timing correct, and it really was a lovely move. And listen, it's great to see somebody like Aotearoa Black just really not so much finding his feet at this level, but being more consistent in terms of his decision making
and not being injured.
That too.
Yeah, guys. One point I have to make is with there were a lot of there were a lot of occasions where both teams, because they had a lot of serious space out wide, they attacked wide, but they were attacking quite flat. Now, the support runners, there were a number of occasions where the pass didn't quite go to hand. It was either on the bounce. So this is where I think when you have that level of intensity and that level of speed, when you're attacking wide and quite flat, you actually need a halfback who can take those front-running lines like Aaron Smith. Because had the halfback in one occasion, I think it was the Blues starting halfback. I think it was Sam Nock, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. There were a couple of instances where he actually couldn't catch the ball, because at that level, that inside pass, when you're hitting the tram lines where there's so much pressure, it's only a split second. And this is something I think the Super Rugby sides will have to look at purely from a coaching point of view, because we have serious speed out wide. But unfortunately, this is something what the Highlanders didn't do enough this weekend. So Auckland as well as Wellington, their halfback and their running lines might need a little bit of adjustment, because this is where the fine-tuning needs to happen.
Right, then, unless you've got any other particular points, we're running out of time, so we must head on to the last game, which was... Sorry, go on, Stephen.
Just quickly, Paul, I was a little surprised. Now, Julian Savia, don't get me wrong, I thought he played really, really well and he looked really sharp, but I was a little disappointed that we didn't see Rayasi given an opportunity. We know what a match winner he can be, and I saw enough of Peter Umaga-Jensen to suggest why on earth was he not starting at centre.
Yeah, very valid point. Yeah, that's something we all overlook. So thank you for bringing up that, Stephen Harris.
Yep, no answers for you, though, I'm afraid. Brumbies versus Waratahs. I'll be honest. This is the one where I think a lot of people sort of checked out for the second half. I actually watched it all, but I'm not sure I was actually necessarily paying attention too much in the second half of this one. Jordan Clark, yes, mentioned Ardy's 100. Congratulations, Ardy Surveyor, 100 caps, Super Rugby caps. Well done, sir. There's clearly plenty more caps to come from you with that kind of performance. So yes, you're not stopping anytime soon by the looks of things, which is great to see. Brumbies versus the Waratahs. Now, coming into this, and obviously thinking, oh dear, boy, the Waratahs got handed one last week. This is just going to be one-way traffic, and they actually got the first points on the board. It's like, oh, maybe, just maybe. Yeah, that didn't last very long, did it? The Brumbies basically do what they do, which is, look, let's be honest, this Waratahs side is a very, very young side. It's definitely in what you would call rebuilding phase for them. The Brumbies have been together a lot longer, and you can see that just from the way they executed everything so much better than the Waratahs. This was over at half-time, 26-10. Line-out, I mean, most of their tries came from line-out mauls or line-outs and fake mauls. But hey, you know that's what you're going to get from the Brumbies. So don't give away penalties that they can kick to the corner. And what did the Waratahs do? Well, 11 penalties. So relatively low compared to some of the others, but still in double figures. And if you do that, you're going to be you're going to be in trouble against this Brumbies side, Stephen.
Paul, what summed it up a couple of times, the Waratahs line-out was probably, was going reasonably well, but there were a couple of occasions where there was absolutely no protection for the jumper, and there was a couple of occasions where Pete Samu just basically walked in and ripped the ball away, and that was off the back of some real hard work to get field position, and it just seemed like whenever they got reasonable field position, they'd basically get bullied. They tried to. Couple of times they tried to drive the Brumbies, and it just really wasn't happening against a very, very good pack. We know how good the Brumbies are, but we also know at home on the defensive line-out drive and also the attacking line-out drive, they're nigh unstoppable, aren't they? So it resembled men's playing boys. I think at one stage during the game I might have messaged you, Paul, and said, "Man, this is going to get ugly."
Yes, my response to that was, it is ugly. It wasn't about to get ugly. As you say, I mean, spot on there. That the Waratahs officially won 16 out of 16 of their lineouts. That's fine. But if you give away 18 turnovers, it doesn't matter how many lineouts you win, especially if you're turning it over straight afterwards. It was. Mertz, I think, was saying that he thought that the Waratahs had played better this week than last week, and still ended up losing 61-10. Go on, Bar.
No. Well, 24 missed tackles out of 88 tackles. That is not playing better. I mean, guys, this is actually going to hurt a lot of chances for some of the Wallabies, like that back row Swinton who plays for the Waratahs, because these guys are going to get pummeled. They are clearly not. They don't belong in this league, not with the type of rugby they're playing and the level of skill they're bringing in. And I just read that, Rob Penny, one heck of a nice guy, he's actually offered to resign. He might actually end up getting fired because, it's not a good sign. And I think Nocturnal Rights on the chat said it's not a good sign at all for Dave Rennie, and rightly so. Dude, for the life of me, I can't figure out that in the state where they play most rugby, which is New South Wales Rugby Union, they've come up with the elite squad of such low experience, and there has to be some kind of intervention here. So it's going to be a long, steep learning curve for some of these younger players, but at the same time, real worrying signs for them as a group. And they just can't seem to pit it in certain very simple skill sets, i.e. the tackle, with some of these sides. So it's going to be a very, very, very ugly and long season for the Waratahs.
It's a surprise because you watch some of the Shoot Shield, which is a good standard of club rugby, and there's some good footballers running around. But I think the problem that they've just lost too many key players over the years, and this is probably a hangover from Michael Hooper, if you know what I mean, and he's taken a few of his mates away with them, because you even if you go back 4 or 5 years ago, but even under those guys, when they had all those experience, Bernard Foley, Michael Hooper, God, I could I could remember poor old Michael Hooper. He was the master of the losing after-match speech. He got so used to them, and you know, once again, they were up and down then. So I just wondered if they relied far too long on those experienced players, and now that they've hit rock bottom, they've got all these young guys there. There's the odd talented guy there, but yeah, I think last night their heads went down. On saying that, they've got the Western Force at home next weekend, and listen, if they want to wrong, there's an opportunity there to wrong a couple of rights or right a couple of wrongs. Beg your pardon. Yeah, they can only get better, surely.
Yeah, I think they've lost something like 23 internationals in the last 2 years. Now, okay, that includes Michael Hooper. Oh, it's 23 or 15. Either way, they've either lost a run on match day's team or a match day squad of internationals in the last 2 years. As you say, they've relied on players for too long. Players like Curtly Beale, as well, Foley, and not brought through players at the right time. Now, as far as the Wallabies go, though, they only have to get 23 guys through matchday squad, and they've got a good squad in the Brumbies. They've got a good squad at the Reds. I think they can put 23 players together. They don't necessarily need the Tars. Obviously, it reduces the number of players he's got to pick from, but I'm not worried for the Wallabies at this stage, because I think we've got two teams that have got players that are playing well, and then you've got a bunch of players down at the Rebels, players like Dame Helen Petty to come back, etc. So I think I'm not concerned for the Wallabies. I am concerned for the Tars, though. Hey,
look at Wales, guys. They only really picked from 3 clubs, don't they? Three or four clubs. Ospreys, Blues,
Scarlets, and maybe a little bit from Dragons. But yeah.
And also suburbs in West Auckland. So based on what I'm seeing with the NSW Waratahs, looks like the next couple of seasons are going to be very busy for St. Ken's and Manukau Rowers. That much I can assure you.
Yeah. Got direct line to Australian rugby.
I
think I've got my new job.
If Rob hangs us his job, I might expect a few calls from him.
I'm gonna be a new agent for Manukau Rovers. Did you hear that, Stefan?
Oh, dear me. And there's White and Matter about to expand its catchment by merging with another club. You had plenty of players there. Why do you have to go down to Rovers?
Oh, we're trying to say.
You have to be quick. You have to be quick at Rovers, because usually it's Ponsonby and Grammatek who get onto them first. So.
Hey, we're getting it before they get it.
So yes, if you're an under 16 at Manukau Rovers, look forward for that professional contract. It's coming your way. Anyway, all joking aside, guys. Look, yeah, the Tars have got a rebuilding effort. They are where the Reds might have been. Maybe, well, they're probably behind where the Reds were 2 or 3 years ago when Brad Thorne came in there. There's a lot of work to be done. So Penny might have offered to resign, but look, I don't think it's his. I don't think it's all his fault. I think it's about how they've been able to retain players as well. Look, 6 games so far in Super Rugby, all of them being won by the favourites, I would say. We haven't had an upset yet. Now, that's good for my TAB balance, but that's not necessarily good for the competition. I think we're going to want to see an upset sooner or later. Obviously, the Super Rugby AU already looks like Brumbies versus Reds final. Super Rugby Aotearoa, obviously we've only had 1 round, so we've not even seen the Chiefs yet. Now, I know a lot of people aren't holding out much hope for the Chiefs, but they are a team that could be rocks or diamonds. They've got the players, except maybe the engine room in the locks there, but they do have to gel, which we didn't see them do at the latter end of last year. So Super Rugby Aotearoa, I think we're still, whilst obviously the Crusaders are going to win it, but we knew that 3 years ago. But apart from that, yeah, I think it's still up in the balance. Super Rugby AU, though, boys, I think is I think we know what we know what we're expecting the final to be. Fair call.
Yeah, I think we saw an early glimpse of what the Crusaders and when they're clinical, what they can do. I'd really like to see the other teams what their run-on form is going to be like over the next 2 to 3 weeks, because the Blues and the Hurricanes they showed a lot of rustiness, whereas if you look at the Crusaders, man, when they were clinical, they were on point. And also from the Highlanders' point of view, there's poor decision making. So, yeah, it's early days, but Crusaders certainly look like they've done more accurate homework. But at the same time, when the Blues were on song and when they weren't sloppy, I really like what they saw. So we'll wait and see.
If you actually narrow it down, guys, the Blues were pretty sloppy. There was only really two pieces of really good rugby. Obviously, the well manufactured try that Perifetta scored, the great cost kick from Aotearoa Black. In between times, there was two other tries came basically from mistakes, and they basically stuttered. And the scary thing is, they stuttered, but still put 15 points on a very disappointing Hurricane side. To me, there's already some early concerns for a couple of those Kiwi sides.
Yeah, well, as far as players go, one thing I have to say is very impressed with Akira Yowani. I looked at his stats, tremendous. And I think he's putting his hand up for early top spot, number 6. And you know, he looks fit. He looks really fit. He looks really focused. And he was busting those lines. He had 4 solid line breaks. So really good signs. And all of a sudden, from not having a stable number 6, I think we're starting to see some real competition in that spot.
And probably provided one of the moments of that match with a brilliant handoff of Artie Savia, who basically doesn't normally miss tackles, but boy gave him the big don't argue. So great to see a guy who we've always known has got this talent. Looks like he's got his head right, although you could arguably say it's questionable if his brother's quite got the head right after the antics of scoring that try.
I missed that. I was writing down, so I'll go back and have a watch.
Well, I have to give it to Rico. He showed some serious pace out there. That was the turbocharged shoes. But yeah, it was a very interesting statement after he scored that try. But you know, each to their own. So hopefully he can build from that, and hopefully he doesn't screw it up like. Remember the last time all he had to do was dot it down. But the good news was he didn't do that. He actually dived on and scored the try. So
a lot of people mentioned that on social media. Absolutely. That was not being forgotten. It was interesting to see Akira Yowani, IM13, scoring a winger's try. Yes, I think questions will still be remaining as to where is his best position, centre or wing. But clearly he sees himself as a centre, and that's where he's played all his age grade rugby. And we'll have to see how that pans out in the future. Thank you very much for joining me again, Stephen and Bella. We'll be back tomorrow night, Monday at 8 p.m. with the Swinging from the Hip, and also back on Tuesday evening with the Driving Mall Show at 8 p.m. Obviously, got some Six Nations news to cover off in there. Not only do we have games, but also apparently the threat of the French government pulling the French rugby team out of the tournament. So we'll have to see what that is all about. Stay safe, everybody, and be kind, and have a wonderful week.